Namaskar and very good afternoon once again. We hope you enjoyed a fulfilling lunch. It is a pleasure to welcome you back back for the afternoon sessions. The sessions taking place concurrently in Sovereign Hall 1 and 2. For your summit-related information, we encourage you to scan the QR codes given on your submit notepads and at the back of your badges. It is truly an honor and privilege to extend my heartfelt welcome to all of you for the enlightening session on biotechnology, a critical enabler towards India's quest for green and sustainable future. I welcome our esteemed panelists who are gracing this session with their presence. I request our moderator, Dr. Taslima Arif Sayed, Director and CEO, Center for Cellular and Molecular Platforms, CCAM, to commence the discussion. Please. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Taslim Arif Sayed, and I'm sure this session is going to be tricky. Just post-lunch, people are trickling in. The brain cells are just firing, some not firing. So the responsibility possibly lies on us to get them firing full. So thank you all panelists for joining in. I really welcome you all today. And if I may, friends, if I may, I think it's first of all wonderful to see this session on in terms of sustainability and what role biotechnology can play overall. So just to introduce again, I am Taslim Arif Sayed. I work as the director and CEO of CCAM, which is Center for Cellular and Molecular Platforms based out of Bangalore. It's a technology and innovation hub, largely from biotech. And today, as I have a great opportunity to have all the panelists with me, what I hope to do is to, first of all, set the context of the session on how biotechnology, since morning, we have heard a lot about, the larger impact of sustainability and climate and other components, how biotechnology has a tremendous potential. I am sold, and I hope I want 1, 2, or 3 of you who are not yet sold to actually possibly join us in converted in terms of the possibilities that biotechnology has to make a contribution, not as the only factor, but to make a contribution in terms of sustainability at large. So if I may request my slides, I have a few minutes to set the context and to get your attention. As the last part of the panel, we will have 5 to 10 minutes for your engagement interaction, so please do engage. That'd be lovely. So as the slides head up, the title today or the session is that how biotechnology is a critical enabler towards India's quest for green and sustainable future. The organizers have been very kind in building this session. I really, really admire because this is futuristic truly in terms of how biotech is going to play the role. So thank you, organizers. Let me begin with what we all know, and I'm going to repeat many things that you all know and know much better than me, but this is for me to help set the context, so pardon me if I'm repeating. We have used fossil fuels for years for everything almost we do. And in form of coal, in form of oil, in form of natural gas, for now centuries. Last 200 years are the highest industrialization, if you want to call it, is the era where highest amount of fossil fuels are being used. And what is the harm side of it? The harm side of it is the outcome that we have. If we are using it so much, what comes out is actually the downside of it. It has been a source of energy for everything you can think of, more or less, starting from cooking, transportation, even electricity generation. While we talk about electricity as an alternative, there also we need actually larger consumption comes from there, industries and so on. And so world's demands of 80% of energy demand today is actually through fossil fuels as a source of energy. And as I mentioned, the worry is that the outcome, once you use it, what it actually gives out as an outcome of that. It has been a source of material, any chemical that you can think of, plastics you can think of, lubricants that you can think of, paints, fertilizers, even medicines actually have the contribution by the utilization of fossil fuels. If you talk about simple synthetic aspirin, it is actually made using benzene, which itself has been derived from petroleum. So we can see how much fossil fuels we are using in daily life. And if you did not still agree with me, this is the list of daily usage we do. All of us, starting from phone, pen, anything you can think of, actually has a contribution where energy was used in fossil fuels. So from a sustainability perspective, it is very important not to depend on this so much so that the outcomes that fossil fuels bring are actually can be averted. So the reason that is bad is that it emits carbon. What I said, the downside, it actually emits carbon. The carbon which has been down there, underneath the earth for years and centuries is actually picking it out and putting it in the environment atmosphere. What it does, what does that lead to? So in 2018, almost 90% of global carbon dioxide emissions have come from this. And why is it bad? Because this carbon doesn't evaporate. It stays and it impacts many other things per se. It actually, these emissions are around 34 billion tons per year. This comes from fossil fuel, 34 billion tons. It's not 1 ton to 34 billion tons. Right now, we are actually emitting this carbon dioxide per se, and this is really humongous. And carbon dioxide, by far is the largest greenhouse gas, which actually leads to the greenhouse effect that you all know about it. If I may take half a minute to tell you about that, the greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide were the boon to us 50 years back, when they were able to capture the sun rays and not let them go out after they hit the earth. So they used to keep the earth warm. Now there is so much of these gases, it is keeping the earth warmer than we want. That is causing the larger impact across the globe. So these greenhouse gases, that they call it, they are the ones which are actually damaging it. And the carbon dioxide is the largest contributor in terms of the amount that is there that comes out of it. This leads to frequent extreme temperature and weather conditions that we know of, extreme heat and cold waves, storms, droughts, wildfires, and so many more things. So it is actually getting to, and we all know the temperature, and while there are few people who are saying climate crisis, nah, but it is happening, and we all know about it. The July, possibly this year, was one of the hottest July for a few weeks that we knew of, and that is not going to go down. It's changing the Earth as we speak. Of course, the Earth will adopt, but it will not be able to adopt if we keep on doing what we are doing. So we have to find the alternatives to this energy source that is fossil fuels. How do we do that? By two things: reducing the dependence on fossil fuels, by hence reducing the use of fossil fuels, hence by reducing the carbon emission that happens. So one is a reduction. And second is that whatever now carbon is around us in atmosphere, how do we capture it? So this actually is a decarbonization at two levels. It prevents further carbon burden and reduces the one that has already happened. It captures it. And that is where the biotechnology will come into play. How do you have alternatives for one? How do you alternative for the second in terms of capturing the one that is around? And I have many examples that I'm happy to go by, but just keeping it. So we have to shift to environment-friendly, green, and sustainable practices, something that the PM's office has recently talked about as a lifestyle for environment, the entire new initiative that they are pushing. And there are several opportunities or solutions which are there. Several startups are coming, several new innovations are coming, along with large companies which are attempting the same, which are actually taking it further. And that is where the opportunity lies in terms of biotech, because these startups are going to build new solutions which are based on biotech to prevent the usage of fossil fuels, alternative sources, as well as provide the capture of this. And the Indian biotech scene is actually expanding significantly with the numbers that are presented here. So what are the solutions that we are talking about? We'll have biofuels, We are working on bioplastics, biofertilizers, microbes, enzymes. I'm sure my good friend from Novozymes will talk about it. Synthetic biology, biosensors, animal feed, waste management, plant-based, and this can go on. There is so much in the potential. Of course, every potential needs hard work and dedicated work to realize the potential. What we are going to talk about is where does the potential lies today. So just to give you a perspective, people are talking about reducing carbon emission by biofuels. There is a lot of work happening broadly in that direction, as well as biomanufacturing, bio-based manufacturing per se. Enhancing carbon capture, plants can be utilized to do that. Algae are being used, microbes are being used to, they feed on carbon that is floating around. They feed on carbon that is in the waste here and there. And there, how can they utilize to do that to produce something much more valuable? And there are some really good examples. I'll give you 2 examples. String Bio, which is a phenomenal startup based out of Bangalore and CCAM, is actually converting methane gas, which comes out of refineries and the largest domestic dairy business that we know of. They're converting methane gas using microbes to alternative proteins. They have been invested significantly more than what is on number here. Phenomenal. So what they are doing is that they're capturing the gas, methane is a greenhouse gas, and converting into proteins which can be used for non-human consumption. Really a fantastic work they're doing. C6 Energy is again using algae from the ocean to create environmental friendly products in agriculture, animal health, and so on. They have been invested almost $40 million in that. And there are many more that I possibly would not, but I just wanted to give you a kind of a perspective of how this sector is actually emerging. So coming to this session, what we want to discuss together in next 40-odd minutes is how perspectives of different experts who are on the panel, and I have an opportunity to moderate the session, is to bring those perspectives in the context of the subject of the thesis today, and how we can, work towards a wider adoption of biotechnology, building a robust bioeconomy. India has a hub for biomanufacturing, which is important, and advance India's mission on practices that can help. So I'm very happy that I'm being joined by 5 very eminent experts. Mr. Krishna, who is the Regional President of India Novozymes. Thank you so much for joining, Mr. Krishna. We have Mr. Paolo from Global Director at Ryzen. Thanks for joining, Mr. Paolo. Dr. Samiran Mahapatra is from Open Innovation Asia Director at Unilever. Samiran, thanks for joining. We have Dr. Veeramani Ramanathan, Chief Technology Innovation Rallis. Ramanathan, thanks for joining. And we have Dr. Shambhavi Nayak, who is Head of Research at Takshila Institution. So thank you so much for this attention, for quickly setting the context on biotechnology's potential. We'll be very happy to take your questions. We are going to keep at least 10 minutes for the discussion. So let me now hand over and slowly begin, possibly with the first phase of our panel. After setting this context, I hope it was useful. And I would go possibly in this, of your opening 1 to 2 minutes remarks from your perspectives on the session today. So if I may start with Ramanathan, you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope people remain awake and can take away a few messages, however small or big they are. So I just want to add 2 points. One is from the crop side, and the other is from the cattle side or animal side. See, a lot of us would be surprised to learn that 70% of the greenhouse gas emission from the crops we cultivate originates from paddy, which is one of the major staple foods. And what is the primary reason for that? The primary reason for that is it is flooded with water. And does paddy requires flooding with water? Absolutely no. We are simply using water as a cheap weedicide to prevent growth of weeds so that whatever nutrients are available, they're all channeled only to the core crop, paddy. Now, what is the way to reduce the carbon footprint one of our staple crops is generating? Is by shifting to a different way of cultivation called direct seeded rice, coupled with non-flooded irrigation. which is called alternative wetting and drying, and there are multiple other options. And that has to come with accompanying technologies to control weed growth, and such technologies are available. And that has to be coupled with, let us say, genomics-derived improvement of the crop architecture itself, so that it can capture maximum energy, convert all of that into yield, and still not suffer from weeds because there is no water flooding to prevent growth of weeds. And all of these options are available. It is up to us to support farmers to shift to that method of cultivation. The second is our moderator actually talked about converting methane coming from cattle into animal nutrition products. There is actually another opportunity here. Using probiotics, there is an opportunity to reduce methane gas emission by the cattle itself. And cattle actually is one of the major sources of methane gas emission. So these are great opportunities, and we should jointly explore how we can exploit that. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent, starting component from a perspective of the larger agri and animal health aspects of climate and how it is getting impacted. Thank you for that, Ramnath. If I may come to you, Mr. Krishna, on your perspectives. Mr. Krishna is the head of Novozymes, one of the largest global company in enzymes per se, and a huge presence in R&D in India as well. So your thoughts?
Oh, thank you, Dr. Taslim. It's very, very interesting, a very important topic that we are all addressing today. If you look at this topic, I would like to talk from two lenses. One lens is of what is today, and I think there we have a lot of data, a lot of insights already out there. But I also think that it's important to look from a tomorrow's perspective, the upcoming decade, the next few decades. And then if you try to look from an India perspective, India is rapidly expanding, right, in terms of economy, in terms of prosperity and all of that. From a 3 trillion economy, we are expected to go to 26 trillion by 2047. Now, you can just visualize what this would mean in terms of the current situation, the current practices that we are adopting, and then fast forward this to 2047. So it's a mind-boggling impact. And if you try to visualize this, it is not a very, very bright spot. It's very gloomy. Now, this is where we need to look, we need to think beyond the obvious, challenge conventions, and also aim high. And it is for us and for the society, for mankind, for ecosystems, to find that new alternative. Now, this is where a lot of technologies will need to come into play, and biotech is one such pathway. I'm not saying that it's the only pathway, but it's a very, very important pathway because what it can do is nothing short of magic. Now, our moderator talked a little bit about the applications, and those are starting from very, very simple, that is of what we know today, but also a lot of products which are essentially fossil-based. This is where we need to challenge. This is where new answers have to be found out and solutions addressed. Now, it's said that if we are able to sort of convert all the challenges out there from a biotech adoption point of view, we are in a position to save 3 gigatons of CO2. And now 3 gigatons of CO2 is roughly equivalent to what India emits on an annual basis. India emits about 2.9 gigatons. Now that's the power of biotech. That is today. Now, and I just talked about a 26 trillion economy of India as we go forward. Now, this is where we need to, so it's a hope. Now, when we talk about biosolutions and technologies, there are about 400 applications of biotechnological interventions that you can bring across different processing. Now, 400 is, some are complex, some are very simple in terms of adoption, but therein lies the magic. So there exists a biosolution for a lot of issues, a lot of solutions or problems that actually exist today. Now, this is a McKinsey study, 400 biosolutions. Now, if we try to use these 400 solutions and then convert it and translate that into an economic value, it's about an economy of $40 trillion for the next 1 to 10 years. That's the size of what biosolutions and bioeconomy can actually look. Now, this is a world data, not just India, but that's the size of the opportunity. Now, when we look at India, India has said the biomanufacturing policy has said a $300 billion by 2030. I just think that is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more to go and a lot more hope that we can actually use the path of biotechnology.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Krishna, on that very, very powerful numbers which indicate the large promise that biotechnology holds. So if I may come to now Mr. Paolo, who comes from Ryzen, as I gather, one of rather the largest company in the world producing ethanol and sugarcane, which has a huge potential again to look at how they can contribute to many of the products which are coming out. So your opening thoughts, please.
Thank you, Dr. Syed. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, you set the stage really well. Thank you for that. Yes. Allow me to introduce my company. Ryzen is, as Dr. Syed mentioned, the largest producer and trader of ethanol from sugarcane and sugar from sugarcane in the world. And of course, there are the byproducts of ethanol, sugarcane as well that we manufacture, which is the biogas, biomethane, and of course the green hydrogen. And I was looking back when we were in the speaker's lounge, what would be my role in this panel here, especially with so many brilliant minds in the panel. That actually took me back to the opening session today when Mr. Puri and Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad were talking about what needs to be done to manage the devastating effects of the climate change. And many things were mentioned, but two things came to my mind when we were at the lounge, which one of them is collaboration. And the second one is it's a portfolio of solutions. There's no silver bullet, right? We're not gonna find one technology that will solve all the issues. And that's what I think this panel can bring, a little bit of collaboration. We have a lot of brilliant scientific minds here. I come from a business background, and I think this is the perfect combination when science and business get together to accomplish something, right? It also, I referred to the words of Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad when he said that, and I took note here, that he wanted to see everything going from the discussion table to the dinner table, and this is what we're doing right now, right? We have, again, those minds, scientific minds here, beginning the discussions at the discussion table, and the companies who actually bring the discussion down to the field. And one last topic that I want to mention in my opening remarks is why Ryzen is here in India right now. And of course, on top of my company also being the co-chair of the Climate Change and Energy Transition Task Force for the B20, Brazil and India have a lot of similarities, right? From politics all the way to economic development and even climate, right? Given that we're both the leading countries in sugarcane production and in the byproducts of sugarcane. And I think that we can actually lead not only these discussions, but also we can lead, when I say we, Brazil and India can lead the implementation of those solutions, especially when it comes to road transportation, aviation, bioplastics that you mentioned in your slide, industrial use, and even medicine. So this is what the portfolio of sugarcane can do for society. And maybe later on the debates, we can bring some more numbers to land all these concepts that I just mentioned right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Paulo. I think very important that the kind of work that possibly you mentioned, which comes on the two kind of sections I had made, there is energy in alternative sources rather than the fossil fuels is a very important one for all of us, because the numbers you are seeing, the gigatons, the billion tons that we talked about is very large, friends, and I think we need to act now, build many solutions together for it to work. That's what the broader answer, I think, a summary of your point. If I may come to Sambhavi now, and Sambhavi is at Takshashila, which is a think tank organization and has been trained in biotech herself. Your views, Sambhavi, on the topic?
Thanks, Tasleem. I think the policy view slightly differs, I think, from the gentleman here, because I agree fossil fuels are at the heart of the carbon emission problem that we are seeing, but they're also heart of the economy. So as a policy analyst, I cannot just take, as much as I would like to support biotech, I cannot take the role of just of sustainable development. And I think the countries which have done really well then in using biotech for sustainable development are countries which have positioned it as a bioeconomy response and not a sustainable development response, right? And I think that is what is really required. India in particular, we have to have a double-digit growth. We can't compromise on that, while also achieving our sustainable development targets, our Paris Agreement commitments, right? And I think that is where policy can really help. Let me give an example. Take Thailand, for example, right? Thailand has a booming bioplastics industry that is supported by the government in terms of raw material procurement and tax deductions, creating research centers that enable people to actually work on new technologies, and even non-tax incentives like bringing in expats, bringing in foreign currency. And that is something I think we can and we should be focused on. I think there's three things that we really require for collective action for sustainable development. One is biotech. The other is political will, and the third is policy. And I think only that combination can actually help biotechnology achieve its potential for sustainable development. And in that regard, I think again there are three things that we can do. One is investments. Second is more research and training. And the third is that we have to use our natural advantages wherever they're possible. So.
Thank you. I completely agree. I think it has to be a balance between the economic growth for a country like India, very, very important, but still, keeping the future where it's going in mind, prepare for it, and not completely, kind of skip it, if I may use the word. Because it's very important, because the future leader countries will actually be leading from this front. So we'll have to balance that act, and something that some of the innovations that we're going to mention are going to be the vehicles of that leadership that will allow that, which will make larger enterprises and drive the economic growth at that level. So absolutely on. If I may come to my good friend Samir from Unilever. Unilever is a absolutely grand, old, huge effort worldwide in many things. But as an R&D head in India, Samir, what are your thoughts on this topic?
Thanks, Tasleem. I would like to talk 2-3 points. Everyone has covered most of the things. Let's talk about 2030 and 2050. Now, 2030, the scenario is the world is going to be 8.5 billion population. 2050, it's probably be 10 billion. Now, what it means, we'll have a resource crunch. And the way we are doing this fossil fuel-based, as Tasleem pointed out, is not going to be available for climate change-related solutions. So we need an alternate way of doing it. And what best place to go is biotech. Now, biotech is biotech-driven innovations is like a bioeconomy at a large. It's going to play a major role in alleviating some of these challenges. Now, why? Because biotech-based solutions are less carbon intensive in general. And it can have some of the damage that we are causing, it can reverse its back. That's number one point. In Unilever, we think biotech is going to make a significant contribution to our affordable, innovative product, or even sustainable ingredients development at scale that is large scale. That's the pain point right now. Doing in a small scale is not going to make a large impact. So large scale, if we can make a difference, both at consumer end as well as environment, that's Unilever's objective. For example, new biotech-based ingredients as a bio-based ingredients, or even the processes that if we can implement in our product, just to give you an example, it can have an impact on our cleaning. We are in the cleaning company, right? So it can have a big impact on the cleaning, the way the better producing better hygiene, or even when superior environment impact. All three can be done through the biotech. Just another, giving a hard example, for decades we have been using the biotechnology-driven enzymes, with Novozyme being one of them, definitely big one, in our home care products. What does it do? It reduces the washing machine cleaning temperature, so we can do it much lower temperature, room temperature, or even lower temperature. So that's the beauty of the biotech. Another example is now where we are using algal oil in soaps. That's the second example from the biotech. So future innovations are also happening in this space. Hopefully it will land and much more impact in days to come.
Thank you so much, Dr. Samiran. So if I may start the second phase, and we'll have one more, and then we are coming back to you. So please stay glued. If I may come back to you, Dr. Ramanathan. So we all know that the agriculture also is not just putting a seed in the soil and letting it flourish. Agriculture takes a lot of other efforts, including fertilizers, including many other chemicals that have gone for years or decades or centuries. And that is where another opportunity lies to build bioagricultural consumables, if I may use the word. Can you expand on that thought? What are those agricultural biologicals which can come and replace, if I may say, with the same level of quality, the chemicals which are being used, so that we don't necessarily get the impact of where people have tried to do organic and have been impacted? But can we do so if you and economically got impacted there? How about any thoughts from you on those sides?
Yeah. So, like you alluded to, see, completely shifting to organic is certainly not a wise idea, because we don't have the tools to completely eliminate the usage of chemistry in producing from crops, agricultural crops. So what do? So there is a first intermediate step. See, because the fact as of today is there are very few examples where biological products can replace chemistry-based products with equal efficacy. That is a fundamental fact in majority of instances. And there are instances where companies have started developing methods by which we can reduce the chemical footprint by developing biological products which are supplemented with a small amount of chemistry to deliver impact that is required in the farmland, but at the same time reducing the chemical footprint. This is one aspect of it. The second aspect is, see, the first round of biologicals probably just isolated naturally existing microorganisms and tried to deploy them in the field. Whereas we have a lot more tools at our disposal today, whereby we can identify what are the active principles that are making the difference in producing a good quality crop and also resulting in a good quality produce, both of which are very important, because if we produce a lot of low quality product, then the eventual value to the farmer definitely gets eroded. So we have to ensure both. So we can actually use various tools of biotechnology, and now interestingly, India also has joined the bandwagon that already many countries have got into when it comes to genome editing. So category 1, category 2, I won't go into the semantic details, but there are certain categories of genome editing which are regulated to a very, very small extent. So it's not a hurdle at all anymore. And such tools can be very, very effectively deployed to ensure we are able to develop products that can create an impact. But even today, we don't know whether they will create the same impact as chemicals, but certainly that is an effort that is worth getting into. That is what I would like to say.
Thank you. And if for friends who were fortunate enough not to study biology throughout their thing like me, just to add what he said, I think the genome editing is a way where you can actually change characteristics of a small microorganism to make it work the way you want it. And that is going to be another unleashing of power of biotech that is going to come, not only in agri, but many other things, including healthcare. And well-regulated genome editing utilizing tools are going to be important for going forward. So I just wanted to elaborate.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more point. See, we actually started with a very good example in India when it comes to a biotech crop, BT cotton. And certainly in the first decade or so, it improved the crop productivity and the income of the farmers. And now it is sliding backwards. Why did it happen? That is because the product has lost its efficacy against one of the key pests against which the technology was designed. It's called pink bollworm. And why has that developed resistance? There are two reasons. The insect itself is under tremendous pressure to evolve resistance because it's a monophagous pest. In plain English, it can only feed on cotton. It does not have any other crop on which it can feed, while the other pests that the technology targets can feed on multiple other crops. So naturally, it is under tremendous pressure to evolve. Number two, there is a stewardship principle which was implemented originally, which could not be effectively monitored and implemented. And now the policy has changed to ensure the stewardship will happen. Even though it has come late, it will help us in ensuring that the technologies we introduce will have a much longer life than what we have experienced with the first generation BT cotton.
Thank you, Ramdas. I think what you saw is that the role of potential biologics as the science goes forward can replace chemicals which have been used for centuries and again bring down the carbonization of the planet that is happening. And that's where the role of the biotech will be very, very large. Coming to good friend Mr. Krishna, can you talk about some of the technologies that biotech enables for climate action and decarbonization? Of course, the enzymes is your turf, but broadly as well.
No, but thank you for asking. So I'll just build on the two examples that has already been shared here. So one is on detergents. And if you were to look and imagine that if 100% of the detergents across the world were to be bio-based, then that would mean that you can actually reduce the discharge by 10 tons of chemicals every minute. That's the impact, right? And detergents is a very, very common application area for biotech and industrial enzymes. And what it does, I think Dr. Samiran has explained it very well, helps in stain removal, reduce temperature, better cleaning properties, and also better BOD and COD properties. So that's one. The second one, I'll talk a little bit on the agricultural side. Now, there is a lot of biopesticides which is used. Now, if you replace 10% of the biopesticides and bring in biologics into the scheme and mode of action, that would mean about 250 tons of chemical usage that we can actually reduce. Now, these are two powerful examples out there. Multiple other examples we can also think where one is on the biofuels side. Now, India is doing exceptionally well on the biofuels side. Every liter that you actually put into your vehicle has a 12% bio component today, and the ambition is to go to 20% by 2025. Some remarkable applications out there. Now, these are something which are of current, but I also think very, very interesting things of the future is also on carbon capture, where you can use biotechnology and enzyme technology in the traditional thing where, fertilizer manufacture, steel, all of these industries, they release a lot. You can actually use these to capture. And then the next part is, what do you do of the captured carbon? And this is where I think a very futuristic biotechnology application areas are emerging. Now, you heard something from String Biotech, where they're doing proteins. But you can also use the captured carbon and convert that into proteins for human use. That's futuristic. And why this becomes very important and sustainable is also of the growing population that we have, and also the need for feeding more mouths. And if you are able to get protein in a sustainable manner, it means that so much amount of less animal farming. I'll stop here, but I'd just like to end by saying that, a lot of the economy is built on a fossil mode. And traditionally, governments have been investing in subsidizing on the fossil-based economy. I think we need to stop that, but we need to start on incentivizing and building on the future, and the future is possibly nature's own way, which is a biotech way.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Again, very well put on different applications of biotech which are there. I'm just speeding up. We have 6 minutes before we go to audience. So I'm just requesting my colleagues to, keep that. But from your perspective, Mr. Paolo, if you can share some of the aspects with the audience on the landscape in bioenergy. What is the landscape? We heard a few pointers and stats from Mr. Krishna, but what is the landscape and where does India fit, since we are talking about India for now, but of course India contributes to the larger global scenario. Where does India stand in terms of bioenergy, according to you? At the same time, what are the major challenges that you see in adoption of bioenergy going forward? I'll keep my question, although longer but short, and request you to. Thank you.
Okay, I'll do my best to keep it to a minute and a half. That's okay. I mean, let me begin with the second one, with the challenge. I just referring back to what Mr. Krishna mentioned, that technology is not the only pathway to the development of biotechnologies to manage the climate change. I would just change a little bit that sentence, saying that technology is actually the start of the value chain of initiatives to tackle the climate change. And I was drawing something very quickly here on the way I see. And I'll get to your question on the challenges, the way I see how the value chain works. It begins with technology, right? And then it goes to the economic agents, which are the private sector. Then the demand comes. And then finally the policies, the public policies. And that's where we face the biggest challenges, right? Because then the public policies, you have the regulatory framework, which somehow you can manage internally. But then you have geopolitics, right? And in the world that we live today, where the win-win situation doesn't really exist, it's I just win if somebody else loses, that's where the challenge lies. If we go back to my initial conversation with you guys, and then I mentioned Mr. Puri on collaboration, if we take that aspect out of the equation, we're not going to be in a good place. So when you talk about geopolitics and the difference between how we perceive the problem, that's where the challenge lies. So, but I won't extend too much on this because that would take another hour, an hour and a half. In terms of bioenergy, and then I want to also go back to a little bit of the low-tech, the bio-low-tech aspect of it. Just one number that came to my mind while Mr. Krishna was talking about biofuels and bioenergy, as a matter of fact, is just by managing the land use of the crops, and you actually have a, since you mentioned one of the solutions to reduce or to tackle climate change is to it's carbon capture, right? Just by managing the land use properly, you actually can capture, the land can be a net absorber of CO2, right? I'll give an example about Brazil because that's the number that I have in my mind. 1% of sugar, the sugar crops is equivalent to generates 19% of the energy mix in Brazil. Just 1% of the sugar cane crops generates 19% of the energy mix in Brazil. Out of this 1% of land, we are now absorbing a net of 10 million tons of CO2 per year. Absorbing, it's a net absorber. So low tech, right? So and of course, I alluded in my initial conversation that we have several byproducts that can easily replace fossil fuel like biomethane and methane and so forth. I won't take too long because I know my colleagues also want to have a piece of they want to give a piece of their mind as well. But we can maybe go back to the general questions, okay?
Thank you very much. And I think those numbers, if I may just get your attention to the numbers that I think Mr. Paolo mentioned, that is the power where you consume, absorb the carbon, and then give the energy out. That's a double impact game that the even low-tech innovations or low-tech solutions can provide. So if I may come to Shambhavi, in terms from the policy perspective, when you look at it, where does India stand currently for bio-based solutions for going forward for sustainability? Where do you think you would say quickly 3 points that India may want to look at it, reconsider it, if you want to say that way, please.
Right. So I think in 2021 we had our first, we had a biotech strategy, and then last year we had a bioeconomy report 2022. Both kind of trying to position the bioeconomy as part of the larger economy, both trying to propel the bioeconomy to $300 billion by 2030, which is extremely ambitious and quite good. That's about 5% of India's GDP from the current 2.6%. The three things that I would like to add in what should be the strategy is, one, it comes from the Department of Biotech, which should lead the effort, but an integrated bioeconomy has to be across ministries. It definitely has to have department like the Petroleum Ministry, Trade and Commerce, Agriculture, Health. It cannot just be DBT, right? And it has to have state representation. I think we kind of lose the idea that our states have their own bioeconomies running at the same time. So I think it has to be more representative of what India needs to achieve. Second is that it doesn't really cater to demand. It caters to a lot of infrastructure investments to supply, but it doesn't really talk about a strategy to create demand, because if there is no demand, just having research and supply is not going to help. And the third thing is that I think it loses the sight of the current geopolitical opportunity that we have to leverage. The whole China plus one approach where there are countries trying to diversify supply chains. And if we can actually use that, build that to create demand, to create a base for biomanufacturing, that will bring in investments, that will bring in more infrastructure, and that can actually set up the biotech ecosystem to do what it should be doing, which is sustainable development. But I will allude back to what I said earlier. It has to be coated in this bioeconomy clothing to be attractive.
No, wonderful thoughts, absolutely. You began with, government leading the charge, if I may say so, and I think unfortunately we didn't have Dr. Rajesh Gokhale, who was part of the session today, but I'm sure they are taking it very, very seriously. And just on behalf of, if I may say that India has just sanctioned a very large, if I'm not wrong, the number could be wrong, but around 1,500 crore effort for biomanufacturing this year itself. That's a huge number. That's a first step. And DBT is taking a charge. Since they are not there, I just thought I'll step in and share with larger audience. But keeping and instill the check, if I may come to you, Samiran, and ask, as a large FMCG, as a global FMCG, where do you think FMCGs in India need from government in support of bringing more responsible biotech innovation for India's net zero journey? It would be good to hear your thoughts on that quickly. Yeah, thanks.
Let me first start with where is India's biotech and few numbers, and then I'll come into the FMCG, and particularly I have 1 or 2 points to add to the existing point you have mentioned. Firstly, India right now is ranking about 12 biotech destination in the world and third in Asia after China and South Korea. And the growth that we expect is going to bring it to 150 billion US dollar is it by 2025. So that's the kind of things. There's a rapid growth because there's a lot of opportunities. And opportunities are because of increasing economic prosperity, the health consciousness, and also the population. I think that's one part of it. Now, biotech sector, I believe is it's divided in 5. Mostly is biopharma in India. And there are bioservices, bioagri, bioindustrial, and bioinformatics. These are the 5 things. And I think most of biotech efforts right now, if I may say, is in the biomedical and biofuel, bioenergy. The earlier point I made about the bio-based materials is probably the new frontier and the horizon. So that it has an immense potential for FMCG like us to adopt. Now there, what we need is the scale, because our, as you know, by company, and we need a large scale bio-based ingredients. Now there we need technologies, we need companies who can produce, we need startups who have the technologies to policy, government policies who can help this scaling up of these things through startup, who has the technologies to make bio-based ingredients. Now, bio-based ingredients or other way, also from waste, any waste, municipal waste to any waste to make value-added product. A lot of startups are doing, but we need scale. That's where I think we need government to help policy changes to encourage more and more SMEs to participate, and taking up these challenges to create this kind of solutions.
Thank you very much, Samiran. I think the scale, the efforts could be there, you can count on your fingertips, but it requires scale to make the change, right? And that is very, very important and something that hopefully will come. So with this, we come to you, actually, for questions that you may have. We hope that you do, and I'm glad that there are a few hands up. So please, I think I saw the first hand from your side. I'll try to give you the mic if there is nobody. So if you can just say your name and your question, please.
I'm Rudolph. I'm from the construction sector. So I read a lot about using bioenzymes at the cement production. What about a low-hanging fruit like the concrete production? Because it's at low temperature. So Mr. Krishna Mohan, is there any work going on in that area for carbon capture at concrete?
No, not on the cement manufacturing, but yes, in the cement manufacturing, the use in that process, there's a biotech intervention for making of gluconic acid, which can then go. But outside that, there is nothing else that we are looking.
Thank you. There is a question right behind him. Yeah, please, do you have mic on you? Can you, can you shout out if you don't mind?
Yes. Hi, I'm Leeraj from Core Galvanics. My question to Dr. Ramanathan, basically you spoke about change in the practices in the rice cultivations, which is addressing the methane. One of the aspects from our experience, we are saying that the practices are simple. There is a lots of potential like taking AWD, which will help in reducing the 30% water level. But the problem is that the agriculture, the farmers, the way they have doing the cultivation practices, they don't want to change. And unless we don't bring in the large amount of incentive for the change or continuously work with them, the change looks like a difficult or it will be long term. So what is your opinion on that?
See, a lot of companies, including multinational companies, have tried conducting demonstrations, but this was not timed well. So almost as much as a decade back, including a CGIAR institution conducted trials to demonstrate the power of this. It's not just actually making rice cultivation sustainable alone. What they did was in the Indo-Gangetic plains, they implemented DSR on rice, and then that crop is followed by wheat, right? And when they actually follow DSR cultivated rice with a wheat crop, they showed, because there is no disturbing or the tilling of the land happening with DSR, standard DSR, it actually improves soil structure and improves the productivity of wheat. So think of land as a system year around rather than looking at an isolated crop. And the ball is back on us as actually companies or input providers to basically go out there, demonstrate with all of the tools and the technologies that are necessary to implement this. If we do a piecemeal job, we will not be able to confront and convince the farmers. That was what was lacking when the original attempt was made. But now I think there is a much fuller range of technologies available. And a lot of us actually have heard about the smoke causing pollution by stubble burning. Even for that, IARA has developed a solution, and working with UPL, it has been converted into a sprayable formulation whereby using biologicals, the stubbles can be degraded so that burning did not happen. So it certainly is a matter of us going with a complete set of tools and demonstrating in a convincing manner to farmers what is the value the entire ecosystem can create.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Yeah.
This will be the last two questions, yours and after
Yeah.
yours. Yeah.
I am Commandant Pradeep, ex-Coast Guard. Worldwide, the ocean management is going to be sustainable, and the world is finding a solution at sea, whether it is energy, protein, or things like that. So the question is open to the panel. What solution India has found at sea with respect to the various sectors, or where we are looking? Because the global economy is the blue economy, being the planet blue.
I can give it a shot, and others are welcome to join in. So absolutely right. I think we have one of the largest coastline, and that gives us, I think, much more opportunity to leverage it as we go forward. There have been several efforts, including at different state level. There is efforts to do the energy work. So the work that I mentioned about C6 is a clear work that has been done in Tuticorin in Tamil Nadu for building right in the middle of the ocean, how you are doing the algae harvesting there. So you're harvesting it from there and taking the energy sources, come to the mainland and utilizing it forward. There are several other efforts, including marine biology components in terms of utilizing the sea and the biology in the sea on utilizing as an energy source, alternative sources, and so on. There is a dedicated research setup that is also being planned from the marine biology perspective. So there are several efforts which are happening together. I may not have the complete comprehensive view, but the ones that I knew, I thought I'll add for now. Thank you. We have one more question here, right here.
Hi, my name is Dr. Rajiv Dwivedi. I work with Novozyme and Drive Bio Business. It's a carbon dioxide emission is a concern that everybody knows, and this is also a fact that agriculture is one of the largest contributor of this carbon dioxide. And then there are a lot of low technology products are available to handle that the carbon dioxide emission, at least to reduce it. So, for example, my question is more like government is subsidizing, and maybe somebody can add and provide some some insight that fertilizers are highly subsidized, in India particularly, and many, same way, there is one, like for example, the microbes, I'm just naming one microbe called mycorrhiza, which Biramani's organization, Rallis, is a leader. So, for example, 1 acre in 1 acre, the mycorrhiza fixes roughly around 4 to 8 tons of carbon in the form of globulin. Now, if you look at that, paddy is a 43 million acres. There are a lot of things.
Question, please.
Now, my question is that is there any thought within the government or the policy makers that biofertilizers can also be subsidized the way the fertilizer is being subsidized, so that farmers can use more biofertilizer, and then that's where that's my
good question. Good question.
My short answer is I don't know. I think biofertilizers has been recognized as one of the key contributors to the bioeconomy. It is part actually of the bioeconomy report as well. But if there's specific efforts to subsidize, I don't know.
No, there have been suggestions, just to add, there have been suggestions considering that the subsidy that has been huge on biofertilizers, including urea that we know of, and now nano-urea that is coming. There is an effort to actually slowly, phase it out and then go to something that is much more sustainable going forwards. That's definitely in the ranks. But I think, with this, let me thank all the panelists for joining me today. Thank you so much and building a fantastic session. I really hope the discussion, although short, was useful and brought your thoughts. 2 people I wanted to actually quickly thank before I give away my mic is the coordinator on the organizer side, Dr. Praveer Deshmukh, who actually did it very well. Thank you so much for building this behind the thing, and also CII for building on biotechnology, which is the future as we go forward. So thank you all, and hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, with this we conclude our session. We thank our distinguished dignitaries for an engaging discussion. I request all the panelists to gather for a group photograph, please.